Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day it might be that you are joining us. This is the Tulsa World Scene podcast. I'm here with my colleague Jimmy Trammell as we talk about some of the things that we are keeping tabs on in the world of culture, both high and low. Um, One of the things that I know you're working on, Jimmy, goes back a ways. About some mad dogs and Englishmen that found their way to Tulsa in the middle of the 60s it was?
Actually, 1970. Uh,
1970, okay.
the reason we even bring this up is there's a new book about Joe Cocker,
Okay.
and Joe Cocker is forever connected to Tulsa's Leon Russell because on the famous or infamous Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour of 1970, Leon Russell was the ringmaster and bandleader of that sprawling group that traveled across the country and celebrated excess in every way possible for this tour that's still legendary here, 53 years later. Uh, that tour really catapulted Leon Russell to fame, even though it was Joe Cocker's tour. And the new book, gets into that and many other things about Joe Cocker's life. The author of the book, Mark Bigo, is coming to Church Studio Saturday, November the 11th, for a book signing event for the new book about Joe Cocker, which I'll hold up for the people who are seeing us visually. But it's really enjoyed the book. I don't know how you are with biographies, but this was fascinating to me to read about Joe Cocker.
I enjoy the music biographies and biographies of a lot of things, to be sure, but and I can I remember, hearing Joe Cocker, most of my life, with his songs from, his Beatles covers, like, with a little help from my friends. And
Yeah.
um and still one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen is there's a YouTube video of his performance at Woodstock of that song, where they do kind of a bad lip reading uh, kind of a thing is with what he's really singing about. It's really, it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't take away from his ability as a singer. Although I did notice you on Facebook posted uh, copies of reviews from this 1970s performance.
Yeah.
I think they actually, this is back in the days when we had people that would review everything multiple times. They actually sent two people to cover this, as I understand, or at least from that's what it looked like from what you posted.
Well, I didn't know, should have known, did not, until reading this book that Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour made a stop in Tulsa. And apparently it was done, according to the author, at the insistence of Leon Russell, because that tour was on the West Coast. And so all of
Okay.
a sudden they squeeze in, hey, let's go to Tulsa and do a tour stop. Uh, and in April 21st, 1970, and the reviewer did not like the kids' music whatsoever. I mean, was not digging the show at all. But I do hate microfilm because the microfilm machine gives me motion sickness. So
Okay.
I did fall on the hand grenade this week and use the microfilm machine anyway to find the review and the advanced advertising for the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour that came through Tulsa.
Okay. Yeah, it was a review that I read the image of that you posted. It's a review that probably couldn't have made it into the light of day with some of the language and characterizations
Yes.
this particular writer used. So it's an interesting time capsule there. So we'll look for that
Well,
this this
I'm
this
going to
Friday.
bring up one more thing Cocker related. Okay.
Okay.
When you said something you thought was funny and you brought up the Woodstock story, I knew you were going to bring up the John Belushi imitates Joe Cocker on Saturday Night Live because he was so
Right.
fantastic at it. And just an anecdote from the book, everyone made Joe Cocker aware of these imitations that Belushi was doing, and they were just sure that in a drunken mad rage, he would be angry. And no, he was flattered by it, and he and Belushi became good friends, which was great to hear.
Well, I've heard that. I've heard anecdotal things about that. Uh, Despite his the roughness of his voice and the uh, physicality of his singing, that he's really kind of a shy, kind of almost insecure kind of person.
Well, he self-medicated quite a bit.
Well, that probably helps, yeah.
Yeah, and the movements you're referring to that Belushi did were, people call it spastic movements. And it's funny, he was a drummer at the start of his career who became a vocalist. And once he got out away from the drums on stage at the microphone, there's a theory that he didn't know what to do with his hands anymore because he was used to drumming. So all that energy had to come out somewhere, and you get the movement with Joe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's something to look forward to in this Friday's Tulsa World, available at fine newsstands everywhere and also at tulsaworld.com. Another blast from the past, sort of, that we'll be writing about. Speaking of anniversaries, can you name two iconic Tulsa institutions that this year are both celebrating their 70th anniversary?
You got me stumped. I don't know.
The Spotlight Theater's production of The Drunkard
Okay.
had its first performance November 14th, 1953, and has been performed every week since for 70 years. There was the spell during COVID where they postponed, but it is the longest running, continuously running theatrical production in U.S. theater history. The only thing that has run longer is in London, The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie, which opened in 1952, almost exactly a year ahead. So they're this Saturday, November 11th, they're going to have a special 70th anniversary, and they have invited El Rancho Grande restaurant at 11th and Utica. Has been there for 50 years, 70 years. I'm sorry, for 70 years. So they're going to be, the El Rancho Grande is going to be presenting a fajita dinner, and then you will watch The Drunkard, which is a adaptation of a temperance melodrama from the 1800s that is, very stylized, very funny, very family friendly, very audience participation, and that will be their way of celebrating their 70th anniversary. So we'll have a little bit more about that also in Friday's Tulsa World. Now, with the Killers of the Flower Moon and Reservation Dogs getting so much attention, we've talked about this a little bit in past about indigenous people in popular culture. They're getting their stories told the way that they should be by the people who should tell them, etc. And you've got a story coming this Sunday about the latest native-centric pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah, people thought that the end of the road was Reservation Dogs and Flower Moon. The road is leading to Choctaw Country in Oklahoma, because the next Marvel Studio series in January is Echo. It's a story about a Native American heroine who is deaf. And in the comic book source material, it was never established she's this tribe or that tribe. But the filmmakers of this series said, we're going to make her Choctaw. And so a special preview event was held in the Durant area last week. They showed the first two episodes, which I really liked. It very much grounded. It was really personal and grounded, as opposed to many of the movies now, which are, across the galaxy and time travel and multiverse. And to me, the Marvel universe needed to come back down to earth. And they're not just coming back down to earth, they're coming down to Native American.
Were you familiar with the comic book series that this was based on?
She first appeared. She's a relative newcomer to the Marvel comic book world. She came about in 1999 in an issue of Daredevil as just kind of a maybe even as a one-off character, and she graduated to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the miniseries Hawkeye. She was a villain in that, but as you'll see in this her series, she makes a transition from, or has the tug of war of, do I want to stay with the people who I was a villain with, or do I go on to something else?
Okay. All right. And this is a TV streaming or a streaming series?
Yeah, it'll be the first Marvel series where every episode will be available on opening day. You can just binge the whole thing, all 5 episodes. And it doesn't come along until January the 10th. And one thing people should know, as you mentioned, the filmmakers worked with the Choctaw Nation every step of the way, just as Scorsese did with Killers of the Flower Moon, to make sure everything was authentic. The costumes are right. You hear the Choctaw language in the series. So, and James, to be honest, I knew this was a series about a Native character. I don't think any of us had any idea until last Friday that it was a Choctaw story. I mean, so it turned out to be a really nice benefit for us all.
Okay, great. And so this doesn't drop until January?
That's correct.
What service is it going to be available on?
Disney Plus and Hulu.
Okay. Yet another reason to subscribe to yet another service. But oh well, that's just the way it goes. But we've got coming up later on this month the second of the 2 immersive Van Gogh exhibits will open up at OK Pop Museum, which is across from the Cain's Ballroom. This one is called Beyond Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience. And we'll have an interview with the woman who is the art historian and curatorial consultant about this, and kind of compare it to the other 2 that have already been through the state, including one that's now running at 51st and Harvard. So let's see what else we got up. We've done reviews of the Canebrake, the resort out in Wagner County on Lake Fort Gibson. And coming up, we'll have the Cabin Boys Brew Pub, which is in downtown Tulsa in the Arts District, in the building that used to be the Prairie Ales Brew Pub. They've done a lot of remodeling of the place. It's a very large space. They have 30 brews on tap, not necessarily all beers. Some are ciders, some are actually non-alcoholic brews, but they have 30 different choices. And it's not a very large menu, but the chef is Jeffrey Van Glabbeek, who's done a lot of high-end places, big Cedar Ridge Country Club, Stonehorse, places like that. So there's a lot of culinary know-how behind it all. So these are just some things to look forward to in the Tulsa World, available, as we say, at fine newsstands and convenience stores and at tulsaworld.com. We want to thank you all for taking some time with us, and we will probably see you in a week or so. Take care.
Yeah.